Welcome to Mystic and the Nerd. We're back for part two. It was originally going to be two verses in one session of Mystic and the Nerd, but we got chatting so much on John chapter 8 and concepts of freedom and also truth and knowing that we decided to do two sessions rather than the one. And so the idea of this Mystic and the Nerd was for Jess and I just to come with a verse that we're curious about or been sitting in, or there's been something about it that's actually keeps drawing us back to going, God, what is it that you want to share with me in this verse? But your verse, Jess, is not in the New Testament. We've got to go back to the old, right?
Going back to the old. And I have to come clean because I actually had this thought today and I couldn't even come up with a verse. I just have to tell the truth right now because we've been talking about truth. But as I was kind of sitting in this bigger thought I'll share, I'll kind of start with that story. Uh, this verse came to me and I was like, oh wow. It gave me a new entrance, I think, into this today. So I'm excited to see where it leads. So I'm going to tell you guys what happened to me this morning. I was getting my kiddos ready for the bus, and one of my kids came over to me and was really, really upset and just tears coming because she was just thinking about our amazing trip that we had as a family. So we're just kind of trying to get back into the school rhythm and everything. And she's really anchored in a lot of the life-giving moments and memories of the trip. And she has this realization. I don't know where it came from. She's just a really deep thinker. And she thought that we'll never have that time back again. And the grief and pain and of this loss was kind of covering all the good memories, happy memories, to the point where she doesn't want to talk about the happy memories because she'll know she'll never be able to live this again. And she's reasoning that, going, even if we go back in years, we'll be different. We won't even be the same. And it won't be the exact same time and the exact same place with us exactly how we are today. And I think I'm just usually so taken by by the way she's thinking and processing. I don't usually know how to say, like, comfort her, I guess. I just want to
Mm.
give her a peace of mind and peace. And so I just start praying as she's talking. I'm like, oh Lord, what's the right thing to say here? The right thing. Like, how can I help her through this? And I just start thinking about how, in a really similar sense, um, every time I've gone to a new place and had a new experience, that yada, it gets recorded in me in a certain way that's so memorable, so defining. And I told her, I've never gone somewhere and returned the same. I always come back changed. I always come back different because I'm holding those pieces. And if we try to go back and relive it, that's different because we want to continually be growing. And but that didn't help her at all. It wasn't, but it got me thinking, because as I'm saying these things out loud, I'm actually processing something that I felt in the similar way on the trip, which was my husband and I had gone with some incredible friends 6 years ago, 2018, and that trip was so different than going back, just my husband and I with our family. And so much to the point where I had kind of structured a lot of the big things on our trip to take my kids so they could experience the same thing in the same way. But between all the things, that it wouldn't land the same way. It was too hot. It was different. The feeling was different. Like, just nothing really turned out the way that I tried to return to the old places
Mm.
and try to make it the same thing again. And
Mm.
so I really was actually in a really spiritual place with that too, going, yeah, I actually understand what that is in the natural sense as well. That's kind of interesting because there are things that I actually thought I'd return to, that I had a really big sense of God's presence. And I'd return to it thinking I could share that finally. And
Mm.
it just didn't. There was just no presence. God was with us, but the presence in that moment was definitely a different encounter, just different.
Mm.
And just processing that with the Lord. And I'm just kind of drawn to that Isaiah concept in Isaiah 43, where it's just that call to forget the former things and to not even dwell on the past. And I thought, is there something there of design? Is there something that, but again, even as I'm processing it out loud right now, we also have memory stones. We also have these continual calls to remember what God has done. Um, but in this sense, I really felt that there are some times, we don't want to box it in, this understanding. There's some times that we are called to remember. And then there's simply some times that I think in my own life, I try to recreate things in my own strength, in my own way, thinking I'll get the same experience. And sometimes I think God is like, I want you to step into the new. I don't want you to go back there to find me. I'm somewhere else, and I'm going to bring you up higher, or I'm going to bring you up somewhere else because I want to grow something new in you. That's why we're jumping off today.
Are you passing the ball to me now? Is that what's happening
Yeah.
in this?
How do we want to forget the former things and don't even dwell on the past? What's your experience?
Yeah, well, this ties into concepts of God choosing no longer to remember our sins and things like that, which, from my understanding in the language, it's to no longer bring back against us. And I think too, like Paul he talks about forgetting the past and moving on to what's ahead of us. And in the same sort of concept, he says, cast your mind on heavenly things, not on things of the world. And so you could sort of see how some people go, yeah, we've got to forget about those things. But the things that bring us life are the things that bring us Jesus, because he is life, right? And so if he is life, then the things that bring us life are the things that I think that we hold on to. It's like when you do and teach and lead us into a places of Emmanuel prayer, you are taking a life-giving moment that is something that we've held inside of our memory that brings something to bear in it. And every time I've done that with you, I've ended up on a beach in Scotland that you've never stood on before, but I'm actually sitting with my fingers in the sand on. And it's not that I've forgotten the experience, it's actually I'm reminding myself of the life that came from that. And I want to sit in a life-giving place to discover something that God is doing right now. And I think, Jess, in my way of looking at it, it's not about dropping off the past, because you can't. That's called amnesia. But it's about harnessing the things of what God has done through his story. See, if you told me that I had to forget the past, then the Bible would not be necessary, because the Bible is God's story of what he's been doing throughout generations. So you can't. Well, I wouldn't, because I love it. I love the Bible, and it's that part of God's story. But it shows to me the life-giving moments that Adam had, that um, Abel had, that Noah had, that Gideon had, that David had. All of these great people of the Old Testament into the New Testament too, of their stories, and we get to see it in fullness, but we get to see the life-giving moments of God interacting and intersecting with humanity in a way that it helped us go from where we were to where we are. That then gave us a vision of what we could be doing, but I think presence is the big statement in all of this. And so for your daughter that is so concerned about it will never be the same, there is a truth in that. But that doesn't have to be a bad thing. That can be a life-giving thing. So the next time that we do something as a family, be it go to Hawaii, come to Australia.
She did say that would be her only option.
We're up for that.
Make things better,
We're up for that. We need to do a crowdfunding moment or something or other to get the Corsies to Australia. But again, like when you guys came the first time, we hung out on the beach. We even swam in the ocean in the middle of winter. It was cold. There were no sharks that we came across at that point in time, but there were lots of things that we engaged with. We met kangaroos, and you could come with all of those thoughts inside of it, but the experience that will be had is our willingness to be present in the moment. What can we do now? And that then adds to the library of life-giving moments that you've had, but it's inviting your children into places of what they can have in this very moment as well. And so for your daughter, it's this library that she's starting to create, and she's had such big and good moments that coming back and going straight back to school. That's crunchy, right? That's absolutely crunchy.
Yeah.
It's just like beach, Hawaii, sun, play, and now I've got to sit in the classroom. Like you can understand why the shift has been so challenging for her. But as life becomes more for her, she has two parents who are willing to sit in the present of the moment, to remind her of the life that was gained, but to discover that the life that is here right now.
Mhm. Well, I love how much our children teach us too,
Oh,
because
yeah.
it just watching that, being able to really identify with those emotions that she's wrestling out, and thinking of that with in a kingdom mindset of how many times I've been disappointed, and that grief. Also, I tried to tell her just how we can feel many big feelings at one time. We can actually be grieving something that also brings us a lot of joy, and that's okay. And then as I'm saying that to her, I'm actually saying that to myself over things that even in seasons, I'm sure many can relate that um, if we look at promises of God or things that we keep returning to, that maybe God is bringing us into something new. And it's very exciting to think that God can be opening new doors, but it can also be really painful to process letting go and being okay to step into something new.
Mm.
And what does that look like? And I think that's what I loved about this scripture. And that's where my mind was kind of leading. Because if you read it in context, God's really addressing his people. And he's going in depth to make sure that they're not afraid. It says just the most incredible things to let them know who he is and that they can trust in him. He gives them a sense of what's to come and some new promises before. But then he goes into this moment in chapter 43 where he's giving them details like, remember what I've done. Here's what I
Mm.
did for you. So he, like, we understand who God is. We can, that aletheia, that we remember his faithfulness and his goodness and what he's done for us. But
Mm.
then in verse 18, he tells them, we'll just forget about all those former things. And then at the end, I think he actually tells them to remember things again. So I have to sit with that verse and just try to understand in the context the best that I can. And in that moment, I think he's really talking about a very specific thing. He wants them to forget how he did it in that moment because he's doing something completely new. And that's what he wants them to focus on. Don't lose focus of what I've done for you as God, as
Mm.
your redeemer, healer, all the things that he declares that he is. Um, and I think that was a sweet spot to land in today to try to
Mm.
find footing, even as I did for my youngest today, to try to open up and be okay with that. Allow those feelings and floods and thoughts to come in, but also how do we look and anchor into the promise of the things we don't even know lay ahead?
Mm. So this is the beauty of you being a parent, though, Jess, and that's for everyone listening and watching along. You're actually seeing a parent who's willing to be present with their child, and not trying to define nor control. It's about being present and letting her speak out her emotions. For many of us, we've been taught to suppress our emotions, that they didn't really matter. But for you and for Trev, you're such brilliant parents that you invite it, you allow it, and again, this is a principle for so much of life, of humanity, but also Christianity too, because often Christianity can be accused of staying in the past, holding
Mhm.
on to a past revelation and not wondering what God is actually doing in the very present and the moment now. Like Gideon, when God confronted him, he reminds God of all that used to happen and why isn't it happening now? And he wants the God of the old. He doesn't understand the God of the present, and the God of the present is like, bro, I'm here. You're a mighty warrior. We're going to do this thing. And I'm inviting you into this place of doing this very thing. And he's saying, not forget what I've done before, but know the things that I'm doing now are going to be different from the things that I have done before. And so Gideon then gets added to the great story of God that we all connect with and that we have. And so if I bring it way up into the 21st century, is your daughter is in that place of her story has been added to your story, or your story has been added to hers. And the things that she will do because you guys have enabled her to express emotions and engage with that will allow her to go further, to grow, to be more adventurous than probably you have ever been, Jess, or that Trev's ever been. And that's not a bad thing. That's actually that's a win for a parent when you see your children soaring rather than crawling along. And I think the essence of what Isaiah 43, and it's like it's part of an enormous dialogue.
Mhm.
around not letting fear control you, discovering who is the victorious God, standing and walking through the waters and the fires and all of that sort of stuff to discover something immeasurably wonderful about the God who is. But it was in a very complicated time for Israel as well, where
Mhm.
there would have been a lot of emotions. And again, people saying things and expressing things, probably even like your daughter did. And if religion meets that, it can shut down the curiosity, it can shut down the desire to understand or adventure. Your daughter's in a very safe place where she has two parents that are willing for her to get curious around the things of life.
Mhm. And I know we're just coming off of a concept around freedom too, and conversation, truth, and freedom. I think as a parent, when you're in those moments, which there are every single day,
Mm,
you just want to bring peace to your kid. Like you just
mm,
want that, like, I don't want to watch the wrestle. It's painful to watch the wrestle. And if I know more than she knows, like I know that it feels this way, but it actually it'll get better, or you won't maybe feel this way in a week or the next time we go or whatever. um my me telling her with my knowledge and my wisdom, it doesn't really satisfy or help her because her experience is waiting. She needs to experience those moments, or she needs to have that taste of it herself to enter into places where she does go back and, yeah, it was different, but we still made even greater memories in different ways, and now I have a greater memory bank, like you said, library of memories to draw from, and it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be or whatever. I think we're so limited on that. And you're right. I think so often I'm trying to think of how God is responding to me when I'm stuck in those places. Raised fist, going, it has to be this way, my own understanding, and it has to look this way. And the only way I see that happening is in my own box of in my own world. And we have to go back, and it must look like this. That's a scary place to stand and to be brave enough to step out and believe and trust beyond our own reach.
mm. It is, but that's where the power of community or family can give great courage as well. Because for people like yourself, Jess, you're a pioneer of courage. And that's part of the beauty and the wonder of your journey in life. Like, even to write the book that you did, and to speak out some of your story inside of that, enormous amount of courage. But the whole idea of writing it was so that other people can see what does this thing of curiosity in the kingdom actually look like, and how can I express that in a way that's actually helpful for people? And that's why I think so many people have praised you for not just the writing of it, but the way that you've been able to articulate it that helps them into their own story and gives them courage. It's like, when Galadriel says to Gandalf, like, why the Hobbit? And Gandalf goes, I don't know, but he gives me courage. Like, may we be people who give other people courage to step into places that they've never been,
Mhm.
starting with our own children.
Mhm. I love that. And I think a lot of these thoughts are also coming. I'm just going to segue a little bit into if you guys missed your opportunity to sign up for prophetic processing with Jade Schultz. She led us through such an incredible teaching around this. And part of what she shared was this idea around just simply asking God, to bring these things at places where we might be stuck. Maybe we don't have enough courage to move forward. Maybe we don't even know what moving forward or beyond looks like. We're just feeling the moment, like my kiddo this morning, just stuck, trying to imagine and things any differently. And it's really, really hard. But simply taking any word, any promise, any of those things that might keep us anchored into a certain thing, like I shared, um, where maybe we're trying to go back to something that God did or said, but He's actually spoken something new, and we want to go into it. And I've been sitting in that place with the Lord a lot lately, just kind of holding up all those words again and saying, "Wow, I've been really holding on to this. Are we still here, or have we moved beyond?" And I've just found that a really safe place to explore with Him in a really gentle way, just kind of allowing myself to
Mm,
say, "What am I holding on to? Maybe even in my heart, I'm not even aware of," and that could
mm.
be seated. Causing some disappointment that I'm just ready to let go of today.
It's beautiful, Jess.
There's your encouragement, friends. All right. That's all I got in Isaiah. Is there anything from your end?
For me, like, I guess sitting as your friend as well and having spent time inside of your family and your home and all that sort of stuff, like, I feel like I've got a window in to some of this whole thought that you have, and it comes not from a place of teaching, but from Yada, and that experiential getting it. And it's not about always kicking every goal as a parent too, because any parent out there knows that some days we do it brilliantly, and some days we kick a whole bunch of own goals, and that can happen multiple times on the same day, maybe in the same hour. But it's the essence, it's the walking with, it's the character that carries the weight in this conversation, and you have that, Jess. Trev has that. Like, you're both such intentional humans, and it's just a real privilege and joy to call both of you friends.
I just say ditto. Thank you, friends.
Well, that's Mystic and the Nerd for another week. This has just been something for Jess and I that we've been pondering. It's not answering any of the questions inside a community, maybe more so for the inside of us. But again, we want your questions. Keep them coming in, and we'll be back again, ready to engage next time. Thanks, Jess.
Thanks, Matt.
Love you all. Bye for now.